Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carol Jones. I am the Director of Harm Reduction at Alliance for Living in New London, Connecticut. I want to thank Amy Smoyer for asking me to be part of this presentation at this conference. It would be lovely if we could all be together in person, and hopefully next year that will happen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my life and how I got to meet Amy, and also how I became involved in HIV support groups and programming at York CI, which is our local women's prison, the only one in Connecticut. So I am a woman with 32 years in remission from opioid use disorder. And during my years of using, I did time at various prisons in various states in the Northeast. Most of the sentences and time I did were at York in Niantic, Connecticut. And then I also served time in Massachusetts, New York, and New Hampshire. I used for many years. During my time of active use, I was friends and acquaintances with many people within the prison system and outside of the prison system. And when I was able to finally face some of my issues, my trauma, and work with some very supportive people who I actually met in the prison system in New Hampshire, I was able to continue my life journey and stop using drugs and continue on another path. So when I stopped using drugs and I was out of the prison system in New Hampshire, I was first in a halfway house, then I got a job in New Hampshire, and my work revolved around pre and post testing for HIV in the street communities of Manchester and Nashua, New Hampshire. I became an outreach worker that worked with people who were actively using drugs, and I found that as a peer to these individuals, as someone who had lived the same life, as someone who had walked their walk, as someone who had done time in prison, it was really an ideal connection, because I was able to connect on a level that some other people couldn't with people that were continuing to use. I have a big passion in my heart for the work around HIV. I lost many people in my life to the disease of HIV. I became committed to continuing in the work, and part of the next trajectory of my life is because I really wanted to remember where I had been, and I wanted to use the talents that I was starting to see in myself to address substance use disorder, HIV, and vulnerable populations. I came back to Connecticut when the director of what was called Southeastern Connecticut AIDS Project decided to give me a chance with my record, with my past, with my very limited employment history, because she felt that peer-to-peer case management would be useful. And since I had, at that point in New London, Connecticut, the beginning of people who were IV drug users was starting to grow the number of clients. So I was hired as a case manager. That was 26 years ago, and that's how I started my career in the field of HIV work. I started as a case manager. I worked for many years as a case manager. I worked up in the agency. I became the senior medical case manager. Then I became director of case management. And all along our agency grew its client base, grew our services. We became an agency called Alliance for Living. And now we offer a wide array of services, not just HIV case management and Ryan White services, but also housing services for people experiencing homelessness, for people experiencing mental health diagnoses. We work with people in our drug using health program to make sure that individuals that have a substance use disorder or are using drugs and or alcohol have a support system and a non-judgmental non-judgmental, harm reduction-based manner. And I worked myself in the last 5 years into the director of harm reduction here, and now my focus is really on directing a syringe services program that we have here at the agency, as well as project managing a group of navigators that are peers of individuals that use drugs. These are folks that have lived experience, that go out into our community and interact with folks in our community and try to educate them around overdose, around the potential for overdose, give out naloxone, help people to save lives, and also address their own use in whatever way the individual wants to address it. We may help people get benefits. We may help people get housing and food. We can do that all from within this organization. We also can refer people to treatment for their substance use disorder. And we really worked very hard to refer people to evidence-based treatment in medications for folks, substance use disorder, methadone, buprenorphine. And if people want to go inpatient, we will also make that work for the individuals. We're truly a harm reduction-based agency. Our goal is not abstinence for folks. Our goal is for them to be able to gradually address whatever is causing harm in their lives and help them stay safe while they're doing it. So the substance use disorder can be addressed by making sure people have sterile syringes, sterile paraphernalia, access to food, housing, case management. Our folks that are HIV positive can have access to Ryan White services for their medical needs. We also provide HIV and Hep C testing and referrals to providers if someone tests positive. Along the way, I also remained very involved in prison work to the capacity that I was able to do so. In Connecticut, early on, I would say 5 years after I returned back to Connecticut, I was referred to the prison to see if I could get into the prison to do some HIV support groups. I can't tell you what the experience of working back in the prison with individuals has meant to me. It's been inspirational to me. Years. The women in the prison are always really pleased to see people that have been through the same experience come back in and share with them their life trajectory, how they've managed to stay out of prison, how they've managed to address their substance use disorders, or perhaps anger issues or trauma issues. And they appreciate people coming back and not forgetting about them. So on the other side of that, it's been inspirational to me to see the strength, resilience, and the creativity behind bars of women every time I go in there. It hasn't been easy. I would say that there were times that I was met with resistance due to my past. It depended on the politics in the state, the directors, the wardens of each individual prison. There were times that I was able to come in with no issue. People knew they check your past, obviously, they check your history. They go over rules, regulations, anytime you're an approved volunteer to come into the facility. And there were times I was able to enter and do what I did, and there were other times that the warden may change and absolutely not, this person can't come in. The last few years that I was able to go in pre-COVID, Amy Smoyer now leads an ongoing program, groups in the prison in Niantic for women that are HIV positive. It's been an amazing experience. I know many of the women that have been in that programming, and every World AIDS Day in December, Amy has put together a huge event that is also navigated by the women in the support group that seeks to educate all the women in the prison around HIV, Hep C, let them ask questions about medications, about prevention, and really help them with any of the misinformation they may have had. the fact that I've been able to take part in the World AIDS Day activity there for many years has really been of so much significance for me in terms of my own growth as a human being, and also has allowed me to see some of the changes that have taken place in the prison system for the good. It hasn't been easy. There were times that I know I was being watched in a way that perhaps other people in the room were not being watched. It's could be traumatic for some people to go in and have to go through the same areas where they once were housed, to watch some of the interaction between the correctional staff and the women. I was not allowed to hug or to really spend too much time too closely to any of the women that are incarcerated there. And on one occasion, I saw a correctional officer that I knew, that I had worked with, and just automatically she came up to me and gave me a hug. She was happy to see me and see what I was doing. And I was told after that visit I could not come back into the prison again. That did get resolved. It was a lot of work for it to be resolved. And it's just another reminder of the systems that we have to really work with and able to maybe do some good work. But I'm pretty have a lot of years on the other side of my use, and I have really spent a lot of time working on my own trauma issues and my own past. And I really am at a point now where I freely share about my past. The stigma for me is no longer there, which is why I continue to do the work I do. The shame I have worked on, and my ability to be open and honest about all of my life is out there. I tell my own story. I own my story. No one can tell my story for me. My words. And I believe that there are so many women in prison, so many women outside of prison who have the same history I do, that are doing fabulous work in many different areas. And part of that is to try to bring the stories of women on the inside out. So I continue to do work in harm reduction with drug user health, but also in the field of HIV by educating, by helping people to get tested, by talking to people about PrEP and PEP and the importance of getting on PrEP. And even as women, we need to have more information about PrEP for people that are not positive. So I'm an advocate, and I continue to do the work. I cannot really express enough the gratitude that I can even speak to you in this way, but also for all of you to think about bringing peers back into the prison system. It's not only great for the women in the system, or the men, if you happen to work in a men's institution, it's also really helpful for us. So I want to end with a poem. I'm also someone that writes poetry, and this is written about a woman that I did a lot of time with in Niantic, and it's my memories of her. And this is my way to give props to the women that are still incarcerated, to the women that are no longer with us, to all of those that lost their lives to this disease before great medications were available. And so I'm going to read to you, Jazzy, you were the art on Magnolia Street. Magnolia Street was all you ever talked about. On and on and on you'd go. I often thought of asking you to shut your mouth forever. You could surely talk and move tornado-like from yard up to the space I occupied in cell block fashion. You said I was your blue-eyed soul. In my ear you'd laugh and hiss and snarl and purr and hum me stories about times past and dreams folded up and stored away under that blue rag you kept the naps in place with top your head. Except for Sundays, when church and your family came, and you would give me stories told 100 times to hold on to, as I would try to fathom how you'd talk so much nonstop and fret and fuss, and yet hot comb those curls to perfection. Child, did you ever stop to swallow? I loved you something fierce for not giving a damn about what others thought, or shutting up when we couldn't stand the sound of your voice a minute more. So used to you, we really never heard you fussing at a head that ached. Besides, our pain was also commonplace. You ran up from the yard and pulled me close without one word. I was alarmed. Girl, if you ain't talking, then something big is going away with you today. You left me with plans for us to reggae at the Jamaican Club and see my painting hang above your baby's bed. Girl, it looks pretty awful there. I just have to let you know. You were most likely running your mouth when you hung that up so high, and I could only shake my head and grin at that piece of palm you borrowed from the Rev on Easter Sunday, hanging over your living room couch. Dwight keeps dusting to keep you satisfied. Of course, you would have been down on your hands and knees, snarling and fuming about a dust ball that we surely couldn't see. No, Jazzy, not even me. I walked into the bathroom, and when I closed the door and saw that purple robe of yours still hanging on its hook, I dove right in head first and tried to smell you back. Your perfumed soaps and lemon musk cologne, just there, not knowing what to do. You didn't run up from the yard to hug me strong and turn me around and say, "You're home now. Girl, relax." Instead, I introduced me to your man. He said he'd been expecting me, and we sat down right where that ache exploded in your head. Why did you run your mouth so much? We never really heard about those pains. You should have known that head rag tied so tight for years with so much tucked away would surely grow too tight one day. And I prefer to think those dreams just found a different way to come from underneath and reach some outstretched hands. Thank you all. That's it.
Okay.